Hey guys, Infidel 1258 here. Today I want to talk to you about a comment I got from a frequent commenter on my channel. His name's Yellow, and shout out to you, buddy. Appreciate you supporting the channel first and foremost. Second of all, kind of a critical or at least critiquing comment from him that is worth diving into. And so I'm going to share it with you here in a second. It's about card pricing, card inflation, and the future appreciation that I always am constantly I guess anticipating and speaking about. So if you're new to my channel, my name is Dwayne. I go by Infidel 1258, but you can just call me 12. And on the channel, we cover Splinterlands all day, every day. But one of the things that I talk about regularly, and those who've been here for a while will know, is I'll say that these cards in this game that we receive for playing are deflationary in nature. And all of the cards that we receive for free by playing, which are called reward cards often, I think they're going to appreciate wildly. And I think the old ones already have. The older ones already have. And I think the newer ones are going to follow suit. And I really believe it's as simple as this. There's only so many of each card. Each card is different. They are constantly shrinking in number because they are burnt when copies are merged. And simultaneously, there's a growing player base. And I think there will continue to be a growing player base in the future, which means increased demand with decreased supply. I think it's that simple. And this is important because the question is going to really push on this and say, I think maybe you're wrong, Dwayne. And so let's read the question now. And then I'll try to respond as best I can. So Yellow said, I don't think your treatise on card appreciation and meaningfulness of rewards will hold true if they continue printing cards at this exact speed. If so, the number of different cards that will be printed that basically do the same thing will be massive. So there will be no significant appreciation on the cards as people can just buy the new cheap version. That is, of course, if they continue to give away cards at this hyperinflationary speed. At this rate, we're nearly 100 million cards given away every month. And that seems way too much for the current number of players if we are still near 400,000 players / bots. But of course, I do believe this will change. So I think Yellow is, first of all, a great question. Second of all, it's so important that we push each other on these topics. And that's why you'll hear me say when you watch my videos, if you agree with certain premises about this game, then you might conclude blank. And I'll say, for instance, that this game makes sense to invest in and to collect as many resources within if you believe that the game is fun and has a future. And so it's so important that we understand the dependent nature of that clause, right? It's not worth holding these if you don't believe it's fun and if you don't believe it has a future. And so there's like this constant thoughtful analysis that has to be done on an ongoing basis that's going to allow you to not only reach that conclusion, but also then walk in that conclusion, because it's going to change as the game changes, as the developers try new things, and as new elements of the game are released. Maybe they're big successes or maybe they're big failures. And possibly, and he's kind of talking about the reward system now and how there's a huge amount of inflation, and maybe there's a hint of a question there as to whether the developers have done the right thing with the current reward system. And I think he might be pointing to a significant concern, at least a significant question. I don't know if this is true. 100 million cards. If you guys can affirm that in the comments below, I'd love to see that. Is that how many cards they're printing every month? I actually don't know that to be true, but I also don't know it to be false. I just don't know. I certainly know that there's a ton more cards happening. Like I said in several of my recent videos, if you're playing bronze, if you're achieving bronze level chests with a given account, I'm confident you can earn 400 season chests on that account. 300 to 400 is very, very plausible. And that's not even playing every day necessarily. And so that's assuming you start in bronze and maybe climb to gold, which is very easy to do with just rentals. And those rentals are going to pay for themselves. Now, I'm not saying that that's the best way to play the game. There's some great rewards at higher levels. I'm just saying there are people doing that. And that's going to mean a ton of new cards, right? And eventually bots are going to do that. I don't think the bots are really doing this yet, but I think bots are going to do this. And when they do, they're going to be mass producing these reward cards also. 400 chests, 33% of them are cards. It's 130 cards per account per season. That is crazy, but true. And so I agree with something of this point. I agree that we are probably inflating the marketplace too much. But then again, Yellow, remember that there's nuance to this, because yes, there is a whole bunch of new cards coming out. But then also, this new system seems to have really kiboshed the number of bots that are playing. How do I know this? If we come over to Peak Monsters, we go to Explore, we go to Explorer, we go to Dashboard. You can see how many accounts are playing the game daily. And this total used to be over, like near or over 400,000. 28 days ago, this is 398,000. Today, 186. Yesterday, 183, 155, 160, 130, 130, 160, 130, 130. I think some of these are bots. I think the bots are coming back. And I think we are seeing some of them being active. But maybe it's impossible for 200,000 bots to return, because they would crush the rental market and therefore be unprofitable, because they would consume the rental market so drastically now that they require, they can no longer use ghost cards. And also now that because each of them needs real cards, they would just consume the rental, and maybe that would drive prices up and make them not profitable. I don't know, but I just feel, I know that bots are out there. I've been listening to Tales from the Cryptmancer, and shout out to Tales. It's clear that there are bots still running, and there's still win trading, and there's still all kinds of stuff happening over there. How many? Most of them are gone, but I think they'll come back. And so the question around hyperinflation and the huge rewards at the lower levels in this game, and even at the higher levels in this game, we have to bring 2 points to that conversation. One, we already talked about, which is that there's a ton more cards, and that's concerning perhaps. But the second point is there is a huge number of bot accounts that were running and were consuming rewards from the old system and are no longer. Maybe they return soon, maybe they don't. I don't know. But for now, and for the last 13 days, they haven't been doing it. And so that is huge. You know, when I say to you, every account could potentially get 100 or 200 or 300 loot chests, and 200,000 accounts are not claiming those loot chests, that's a huge reduction in the potential claiming or profitability or inflation of cards, right? That's not currently being accessed. And so is this inflation too high? Maybe. Could it be way higher? Yes, it could. And so I don't know. It's too early for me to necessarily agree or disagree if this is quote unquote hyperinflation for the cards. But I would argue that we can still see from the KioKiz data, the rewards, yeah, they're going up fast. They were at, I mean, I'm going to say it's these, like Venari Heatsmith is a common card, and it was about 58% last Friday, I think. That's Friday, 6 days. So, I mean, I don't know. That doesn't feel like that's so much more, right? It's 2%. It's these are going to sell it soon. But I originally was thinking it was like closer to 1% a day, and it's not. It's like 1/4% a day or something. My point is, I don't know that I agree right now. Maybe if all the bots return, I would agree to what you're saying around the hyperinflation, but I don't know that I agree because of the reasons I just explained. I think the bots are sidelined for the most part, and I think that means that a potential hyperinflation is not currently here. Plus, I think that the devs are going to change how the rewards are going to work at the lower levels. And I say that based on the last town hall and how Aggie and Yaba spoke around the issue of the rank rewards. There was tons of questions and criticism and feedback, and can we change this and why don't we change that? And the answer was kind of almost, guys, please, like, we get it. You've got concerns. We'll look at it soon. We're looking at it, is what the answer was. And I felt the tone of the answer was, we get it. We're watching it. We understand that changes may be required, and we are giving this deep analytical thought. And so I actually expect them to look at and change how the bronze rewards work, and therefore maybe this quote unquote hyperinflation is less of an issue than you might think. So that's the first big conversation just around that issue of hyperinflation. But then another major point you raise is that you said the number of different cards that will be printed that basically do the same thing will be massive. This is kind of a second point that I want to pick apart, in this conversation. I don't agree with that at all. I think if you come over to the marketplace and you just look at the monsters that are available, and you can go splinters by splinter, and I'm looking at every card here. Let's just look at regular foil. Let's look for tanks on the red team. Actually, let's look modern red team tanks. What are the tanks? There's a tank. I don't think he's a good one, but there's a tank. We got 1, 2, 3. Phineas is a secondary tank, but let's call him a tank. 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7 tanks for the fire team in the modern format, and I don't think maybe any of them are alike. Grum Flameblade is something like Forgotten One, something like it. And depending on what level you play at, whether it's bronze or champion, there's big differences because of the different abilities that kick in. But if you get like a max level Forgotten One versus a max level Grum Flameblade, they are very different, and yet maybe they could work in the same sort of context, possibly. But they're so different. I mean, Void Armor, Bloodlust, Void, and Giant Killer versus Immunity, Retaliate, and Piercing. This one is quite susceptible to magic. That other one, Grum, is not. This one is... immunity is quite unique also. And of course, Grum doesn't have immunity. These are the two that I would argue out of those 7 are the closest to one another. And yet they are very different. Living Lava is like a slow, shielded thorns, armor and hit points. Like he's a slow melee tank. And there's another slow melee tank over here called the Charlock Minotaur. But even still, very different. True Strike and Retaliate with no sort of defensive abilities, no void, no shield, versus the one I just mentioned. Where is it? Living Lava is totally defensive. Shield, Rust, Thorns. So I don't know, man. I mean, this is me just looking at the fire team, and I could keep going on. I mean, Phineas Rage is nothing like these other ones. It's super fast, Retaliate, great secondary tank. He's a secondary tank, first of all. Brute is, I guess, something like Phineas Rage, but again, very different. So every single card I mentioned is so different than one another. And this is just fire, but I could do it for every single splinter. Let's go all cards, and we'll look at healers for blue. So who do we got for healers? Healers, for me, that's going to include repair monsters, heal monsters, tank heal monsters, repair monsters, maybe triage. Okay. So let's say triage. There we go. We got 3 at triage. This is an old card. This is an untamed reward. So this will be in the modern format, and this is a modern format. So this one's got triage. This one's got triage. They both are going to be in the modern. But look at archery damage, no archery damage. Super fast, really slow. Well, not really slow, but 4 speed at the highest levels, 2 at the lowest. a little bit of archery damage. The silence is a nice little support ability. Cleanse and triage with 9 hit points. This is kind of a secondary tank almost, or a primary tank in a low mana match. This is a archery support monster. They're very different. Merman Healer is a magic monster with triage, strengthen, and cleanse. Something, again, something like both of them, but nothing definitely distinct. And that's the triage, but then we have repair. And there's different repair. So this repair monster is a support monster. This one's a tank. Totally different. Tank heal. We've got the Crustacean King, which has tank heal, super slow speed, a bit of archery damage at the medium levels. You got to protect up here at like gold levels. Very interesting card. Love that card. Albatross has no attack whatsoever, is a flyer, which is great, has tank heal and costs 1 mana, which is really, really ridiculous for a tank healer. And then you got Merdali Guardian, who does the tank heal and repair and strengthen. You know, I feel like I could go on and on with this, but I think I've illustrated my point. There is no grounds for saying that the cards that are created and that have been coming out are in many ways or in any explicit way, how did you put it? Basically the same. I think they're basically nothing alike and have some rudimentary similarities with massive distinctions and at every single level. At every single, whether you're playing with those cards I just mentioned, even just for those cards I mentioned, looking at what they would look like in bronze versus silver versus gold versus diamond versus champ, each one is going to give you a different vibe and a different feel. So I really don't think this is accurate. I think this in a nutshell is like a superficial comment that Yellow, hear me, I appreciate you leaving the comment. I'm not trying to roast you here. I just want to push back on you and say I disagree strongly. But I feel when you say basically the same, I look at, there's only a few cards in the entire game where that's the case. Something like and I've told you guys this before, but the neutral monster, Onyx Sentinel, is a lot like the Lord Arianthus. It has Shield, Void, and Thorns, and it has 5 mana cost, and it's a neutral. The Onyx Sentinel is a epic. The Lord Arianthus is a legendary. This card has a return fire. The Lord A does not. This is one of the only cards in the entire game that kind of has a replicant. And this is a modern card, and Lord A is an old card. So they're not even necessarily going to play in the same battle, in the same league. Yes, you could play your Onyx Sentinel in the wild format, but you could not play your Lord A in the modern format. And so I really don't think that's what you said there is fair. I don't think that they're basically the same at all. I think almost none of the cards are substantially alike. I feel strongly about that. And so I do believe that Splinterlands very intelligently looked at that and does their absolute best not to copy and paste and to create new unique looks that will therefore drive unique desire and unique buying pressure. So I don't accept that second point there. And I would say that maybe I should mention, in the old days, they didn't recognize this issue. They made Alpha, which was the original set of cards. These are the Alpha cards. And then they decided these sold out rapidly and they needed to make new cards, but they weren't quite ready. So they just copied and pasted those old cards. And that's why you get Alpha and Beta have the same monsters with different frames. So let's look at one. The Feral Spirit has a beta version and an alpha version. You can tell by the framing of the card. This is the alpha, this is the beta. They have a different price point. They have a different number of BCX required to level it up. But they are otherwise the exact same card. They have the same abilities at the same levels, and there's no difference except that the alpha will give you a 10%, I think, bonus on your wins, and a beta 5%. So what's my point? That they did in the past fail to recognize the importance of creating new unique monsters every single time they release a new pack. They did fail to do that in the past. Now they don't. So I'm going to leave that alone. But so I think those are the two big points you make, and I feel strongly that that's not fair or accurate. So I do, and lastly, you kind of hint at that there's a lot of bots. I think the bots are gone for the reasons I outlined earlier. So that's three kind of comments you made, and three the responses I feel I've offered. And like you say here, you do believe things will change. And so you're not, I don't think you're set in stone on your opinion. You're just you're pushing on me to try and get this sort of conversation going, which is great. Love it. Time will tell what the game does, what the developers do, but I believe they've built the track record of establishing new cards will be unique and offer interesting, unique value in the form of collection power, in the form of different leagues being playable for them, in the form of different tournaments being able to use those cards within and not other tournaments, and then different abilities at every level. So I really feel strongly that the new cards, including those reward cards we're earning now, will hold significant value in the future because they are deflationary in nature and because the user base will grow, because this game is fun and has a future. Guys, thanks so much for your time and attention. Have an amazing day. God bless.